the whole, you don't want it forgotten, right? You don't want, I mean.
All right, guys, looks like we're at the time. Let's rock on. We got a group coming to push us out at 5. Wait, we're all that group too, right? So, let's see if we can. I've been coming here to the chair, there's some scheduling conflicts with the other gentlemen. So with that, I'll call us to order. Is there anybody who needs to participate electronically? Kelly? Anybody? No?
I
Okay.
think Mr. Missions is gonna join.
I'm sorry?
I think Mr. Missions is gonna join on that.
Okay.
Yep.
So should we go ahead and preemptively make that motion that he participate electronically? So is there a second? Second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
It needs to be on time.
Easy to say when he's not here.
I know. You know, I said it anyway, so.
All right, well, that brings us to approval of minutes. I think everybody's had an opportunity, I hope, to take a look at them. Any corrections, changes, clarifications you'd like to see? This is from March 20th, is that right?
They actively got that I wasn't here.
The important piece, right? All right, what's your pleasure on the minutes, guys, except for Robert?
I motion we approve.
I got a motion. So. All right, it's a second. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye. All right, moving right along. Section. All right, let's go to our work program. Kelly, what would you like to say about that? This is where we're sort of targeting what we do with our federal dollars, ensuring that the budget aligns. Would you like to summarize that for us?
Yes, we, again, the TPO saw the draft work program from a wording standpoint at your last meeting. What you didn't have at that time were the allocated dollars for the various projects that we presented. Part of that was at the time we did not have our DRPT allocation dollars. In your packet now is the allocation for the full 2026 budget, which is high, right? When you go to page 24 and you see the full budget there at $953,854, that is not a typical year in any stretch. However, it is available should, as we talked about at the last meeting, should one of the localities come up with a project that you want to execute, as long as it's brought before the TPO and you approve it, it can be used. Because what you also see, and again, the large amount of those dollars is a function of, we had $269,990 that carried over from FY24. A large function of that being, again, a staff, or we lost 2 full-time staff that were, so that has carried over. So again, we see the budget as the breakdown for the various general technical assistance, that's for running the program. And you also see what you'll see, you see the subtotal of $173,000 for our VDOT dollars. That's the total program. So again, what we're charging for staff time, that dollar amount is very typical. What is less typical is that I'm showing a direct carryover estimated at $163,242. And that is without a locality coming in and saying, hey, we've identified this project. Then based on what we do have in the work program, those would be dollars that we carry over. So, and you'd see them again in FY28. So the important thing is they're not lost and they're maintained for when they are needed for a project that is promoting and doing those things that we need to within our long-term transportation plan, and most importantly, supporting you and our partners in executing. And similarly, section 2 is our DRPT dollars, which we received that allocation actually last Wednesday, our FY26 allocation, which was $12,000 some odd dollars more than we had, than what we anticipated we might have had from FY24, was what DRPT told us to use if we did happen to get our allocation. Similarly, down at the bottom there where you see the subtotal for the section 2 of $154,950, that's what we anticipate spending this year. And then you'll see it's a sort of, I want to point out something. If it looks strange when you look at section 2, because you see FY24 and you see FY25 and you see FY26. it's important to point out that DRPT is a little bit different in their dollars in that we put in a 5303 application every year. However, the grant at DRPT is an 18-month grant. So we always have two running and there's an overlap. What is unusual is that currently we have 3 years. So that's why you see that small amount there with FY 24, it says $27,480. That is because we're not 100% sure that we'll fully bill everything out at the end of this fiscal year, being the end of June. And DRPT provided us an extension for that for FY 24, which would have typically ended to December of this year to match with what is also the end of the FY 25 year, which will be December 31, 2025. So that's why there's so many, you're like, why do we have 3 different fiscal years within, that's what explains that. But again, we have an anticipated $88,000, which we don't anticipate fully extend spending that would roll over to a future year.
So you have 160 in rollover funds, and if those were to not be drawn down over the course of the year, to that you would add the 80 some odd thousand to it.
I'm sorry.
What I understood you to say was there's $160,000 that is programmed in for use if one of the localities comes up with a project this budget year.
The 163,240
Right.
of VDOT dollars.
Okay, so that's a pot of money. Now, if we don't use that this year, you're also projecting 88,884, right? So if we don't use the 160 from VDOT, would we add to that the 88 at the end of the year as a pot of money with probably different strings, but a total number we can work with?
Yes, potentially. However, DRPT is a little bit different in that it is within the urbanized area as it pertains to where we have typically GLTC services. So our DRPT dollars are a little bit more constrained within the footprint of the TPO.
So I can come back later and lobby for Campbell to get some piece or portion of the 160, but I'm not going to get the 88 because it's a GLTC sort of tie.
Potentially.
Unless I want to run GLTC into the county.
Because this year, it depends, because this year in our DRPT work program, if you look at section 2, one of the things that we're doing is going to be talking to the businesses and the stakeholders along Timberlake into Campbell County to see whether there is a need to extend service into Campbell County. So absolutely, DRPT is very supportive of activities if you're looking at the what could be projection for services.
But that's baked in, we're already doing that. So let's say out of that study, we find there's a demand for a trip up to Walmart. Would this 88 be available to talk about implementing
It would
that program? Okay,
It would be.
so thank you. Now I want to go back and see how I grab the 160. If Campbell, Brookneal, or Alta Vista want to access those funds, what are the parameters? Are these just study dollars or are these actual project dollars?
Study dollars.
They're
They're just
study
study
dollars, but Brookneal, not so much because these are TPO dollars.
Yeah, all right.
These are gonna be
yeah.
limited
They're
to
part of
Yes.
Campbell, but not the
the
TV.
Rustburg area, the 24, everything north of that.
Otherwise, I would be all about Route 122 of the lake.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, I've already got a scope developed for that 501 section using other dollars, not associated with the MPO. VDOT.
Okay, so Brookneal can't access the 163, but VDOT's working a plan. Thanks for that clarification. I can't talk about grabbing money from my community without including Brookneal, whether they're eligible or not. So.
Always what we talk about.
Okay, so it's study money. Sorry.
Ask a couple questions.
Chair
Yeah.
doesn't recognize this a lot. Just power trip there. Yes, of course.
You were asking a lot of the questions I had, but maybe in different ways.
Okay.
I guess, so are you looking to this group to go back to their boards to say, hey, we've got 163 to study with? what do you guys want to suggest to the TPO to study? Is that what the action is?
Am I wanting you to do? No. What I, because
You want me to answer?
I'll say, I'll let it break and then I'll follow it.
Is that a dumb question?
No, no such thing.
Ultimately, you will be asked the question
Correct.
if it's done correctly. We have a transportation tech committee meeting that is your planner, everybody's planners from the region that participate on a monthly, quarterly basis. We go through a review process based upon what the V-Trans needs are and identify.
V-Trans.
V-Trans is overreaching statewide transportation plan that identifies, that identifies all the problem areas. And so we work with the TTC in identifying those areas, and then we'll prioritize where those study monies potentially could go. We're gonna want NPO support, CVPDC support, and that's ultimately the boards will find out about it and be supportive of that, because the way we are doing studies right now, we are asking for the local jurisdictions to sign off on a framework document that is verifying that basically, yes, you're aware of the study, you're aware that there are going to be recommendations. We could push those recommendations forward for funding.
So if I want to know what Campbell's representative to that group is saying, ask Frank,
Paul Harvey.
ask Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey,
And I'll ask Paul.
he is the rep.
Okay,
So instead of us pushing it down and it comes up,
Oh,
then there's a data conversation, a state plan conversation. You see what we might have locally that we could leverage. We bring that up to the TPO and MPO concurrent with bringing it up to the board of supervisors to make sure everybody feels good that it's a project worth pursuing.
This particular work program right now is associated just for the functionality of the NPO in itself.
I also want to say, Tom, the other component is that you have the long-range transportation plan, we have safety action plans. So the process of going to any particular board and saying, hey, do you guys have a project? What this board does and what the TTC does, and in creating these regional plans, those are the guiding documents. So where someone may say, hey, this road over here really bothers me, right there, we'll be updating the long-range transportation plan. So that's where it gets in the hopper. So
Okay.
I just want to point out that we do have, so it's not, so that the long-range transportation plan and those STAR studies and those type of things serve as the foundation by which you can build on to utilize these. So you've got the STAR study that's being done, the safety action plan that's looking at identified areas where we know there's high incidence for serious injuries or fatal accidents. And they've been looked at. So that if those identify, hey, more needs to be studied here, those sort of represent the more logical next options. That makes sense.
Yeah,
In following
and
me
and
that
Frank
way.
knows me, probably anticipating what I'm about to say. I appreciate those details. I'm going to forget them, but I'll never forget that Paul Harvey is my guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of having staff. That's exactly right. Nailed it.
Exactly.
So, thank you. Did
Did you have other questions?
No, I think.
All right, are there other questions or discussion on the site? Good afternoon, Mr. Dean. Okay, if there's none, I think we're looking for a motion to approve the plan. It was attached as a resolution, was a 3-8. So I think we need a motion to adopt our resolution if the group is so inclined. Pleasure.
I'll move to approve it for the resolution.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries, thank you. All right, so this brings us to the tip adjustment.
Yes. We received a request directly from DRPT to do an administrative adjustment to our tips on behalf of the Central Virginia Alliance for Community Living, so that they can submit what's called a 5310 application. And a 5310 program provides funding for mobility for seniors and disabled. They want to put in an application, so the administrative adjustment for FY $25. Now, I do want to point out an administrative adjustment for the purposes of the TIP, which is our local version that articulates where federal dollars are being spent. If you have a project where you're changing it under $2 million, you're doing an administrative adjustment. That's why we did not have to go in the newspaper. We did not have a public hearing associated with it. And in the past, we did administrative adjustments fairly frequently. But under the new format, we do bring that to you. In the past, we did them. So we're bringing that to you, open that you will.
It's an $8,000 adjustment to the plan
Exactly.
to capture money that's coming in for seniors and disabled. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does it increase our local match at all? or-
No.
So this isn't just basically a budget. amendment.
Exactly. It doesn't touch, it has nothing to do with our dollars. It has to do with funding that was already allocated to this agency, but they want to put in an application for additional dollars, which is a good thing.
Forget my ignorance real quick, but what is the Central Virginia Alliance for Community Living, Inc.?
They are
CVTPO.
nonprofit. They're a nonprofit that provide services to.
Used to be area agency on aging.
Correct.
Or-
Similar.
Believe you didn't know.
I'm just kidding. If I came to more of these meetings, I would. Softball.
Did Rick so move? I
We
like
have
it
an
here.
action. Adequately answer, you kind of got tepid responses there, Mr. Miss, are you comfortable with that? Any further? Any?
I'm afraid to ask anything.
All right, anybody else have any other questions or discussion on this matter? If not, I'd love to entertain a motion on it. Oh, pleasure.
Motion.
Approve. No, motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
And a second, further discussion, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Brings us to the work program update, Kelly.
Okay, so the 221 corridor study, we had the second public meeting was the 18th of March.
You want me to review this presentation?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I do, because I was gonna look over you. There was a survey that launched the same date of the 18th that ran through the 8th of April. There were 119 participants. Sorry, there were 1,537 responses from about 119 participants, which is far fewer than at the first survey where we had 29,000 responses from 4,000 people. But the second survey got pretty technical, and I think some folks, when you're asking people to look at an intersection and say, what are your thoughts? Should it be a flyover or a through cut? I think that has a lot to do why you get far fewer responses, because what people really care about is, what are you doing to make this easier for us to move through there, safer for us to move through? The Board of Supers received, the presentation there's a copy that was in your packet. I was not at that meeting. I wasn't able to be there, but.
I thought it was fairly well received. I mean, I don't think there was any overt objections to any of the recommendations and so forth. There was tepid endorsement from the surveys. I mean, if you're a scale of 1 to 5 and the rankings are 3.2 or 3.4,
Right.
Where do you go? I mean, is that something that the community is all behind or not? So anyways, I think a lot of the recommendations were pretty solid. Again, I can't recall anything that the board just said, this is a terrible idea. I think the next step that I recall was, there needs to be obviously some costs put behind some of these
That's right.
recommendations, and whatever those costs might be, what are the logical programs that can be matched up to those costs in order to advance those. I think that'll be our next step in terms of that conversation. And
That is exactly where EPR is coming back based on some of the recommendations, what the cost will be, and that again will very much inform The one was Enterprise Drive. Very high cost solutions there. And so that was one that will need additional study. So that's where we are.
But
Right now.
I honestly, that recommendation, I kind of thought that the board might laugh that out in the room, but actually it actually makes some sense.
Yeah.
Now, whether it makes some sense from dollar value or put against it, I don't know. But really from a traffic mobility circulation standpoint, it looked fairly sound.
Yeah.
So,
But I know that the more study will be on that one. And so again, that's one where, we will bring back to this body, once the cost estimates come in for informational purposes. That is another study similar to the intersection study where we're not officially asking for this body to adopt. Because ultimately, again, it becomes what Bedford wants to do. But again, if they come back, obviously as a locality, as we do as a TPO, if one of our localities is going for those dollars, that's when they come back to us and ask for their support. And then what may be for something further. So they might be competing against you for that 186 for additional
As long as
study.
somebody puts it to
Y'all can
work.
do rock, paper, scissors, yeah. So that's the 221.
All right.
The safety action plan, that is moving, it is still moving forward. We originally were gonna have that draft plan presented at this meeting. But in earnest, the draft came back and what we heard from myself and some of your our work group and your representatives, that we needed a little bit more information and more specificity on some of the recommendations and a higher integration of some of those known priority areas. We wanted a little bit more visual and separation from the towns. And as a function of, I communicated with all the localities and there wasn't anyone who was preparing for or intended to put in a federal application to the Safe Streets and Roads for a construction. And as a function of that, we did not feel the need to rush bringing the safety plan to this body. What was more important is that the document represents what is needed on behalf of all of our localities, such that it serves to support moving forward with some of the HSIP dollars, the VDOT Highway Safety Improvement Program and Smart Scale. Because at the end of the day, right now, the next application round for Safe Streets and Roads for All is June 26th. Now, originally, the program was to move out to the end of 26, but that's an unknown. So as a function of, will the program continue? So the draft plan is still in works. We'll look to bring the draft back to this body at your July meeting, and then look for adoption at the September meeting. And that's where that is. So again, no rush, no reason to rush. More importantly, the quality of the product.
Questions on that, or should I move on? Yeah, next.
All right, multimodal plan. We, the Timmons Group is working with the city of Lynchburg on the multimodal plan, and we've really done some good analysis. And I just want to be able to show you. We can go to the next. So they've developed a prioritization metric. The work group did, where we're looking at the prioritization of connectivity and access and demand and usage. And then with each of those two priority methodologies, each of these five contexts of which they looked at GIS and analysis. And we can go down. And I apologize, I couldn't do that. So is there a way you can make it? There we go. So to give an example of proximity and key destinations, for each of those 10 metrics, they pull the GIS, and what you can see is, so what we're looking at is gaps and sort of the methodology of how we'll determine where we're going to make recommendations, because we did not want to go to the public and say, what do you want? And then realize that there needs to be, it is the wrong thing to do to ask anyone, what do you want, if you know you can't pay for it, and there needs to be a methodology. So we've been very intentional in having the discussion with our city partners, GLTC, Centra. And so what you see is like proximity to key destinations. 4 and 5 means there's the most number of those destinations, and where you have those light colors or fewest, so you can kind of go down, Patty. So existing network, same thought process for each of those 10 metric. And then, so I'll send this to you, but
I didn't see this. Right.
well, this wasn't in the packet because we were, should have been, but I'll send this to you. And this is just to show you, because this is new information. And then what we have is for each of those priorities, they have the GIS where we're looking at, I'll drive here for a second. And then to give an example, so for grid analysis, what each of those squares is 1/4 of a mile. And where there's a green square, right, that means that there is a lot of destinations. There's a lot of connectivity. It has a lot of those components within those 10 parameters. And so it starts to inform if there's a gap in this area, you maybe get a lot of bang for your buck because you're able to, there might be a lot of people that really need that gap or that connection. But out here, where it's red, small population, small destination. So it might not, it doesn't mean it can't, that there's no reason that you can do something. And then for each of these grids, there we go. Each square has a land use analysis grid where you see the percentage of commercial, institutional, multifamily, and then like the sidewalk coverage. So you have 49% here. So each of these grids provides that amount, that information. And then each of these various sections. So here's a connectivity grid. That's the GLTC. Trail connectivity. So each of these layers, you can go in here and then they're rated. So we're at the early portion of this. So we'll have our next meeting on the 29th, where they've then taken the analysis and the prioritization that the work group came up with, and they've narrowed it down to where we'll actually have recommendations. I just got sent that new information today. I'll look at it, send it out to the work group. We have our next meeting on the 29th. And then we will be going out to the public through in June. City Source comes out the second Tuesday of June. I believe it's the 11th. I just met with Anna. So we're going to be meeting. We'll be located at GLTC. We're going to meet with Lynn CAG, Central Virginia Alliance Community Living, have information for their specific clients. We're going to locate where they are.
Wherever they are.
Yeah. What? They have an agency here. Also Central Virginia, LaSalle, the Lynchburg Area Center for Independent Living, where we'll be there to meet with their clients. We'll be at GLTC. We're also gonna be at Bikes Unlimited, who has their Pints to Pedals on Tuesday nights. A lot of fun. To meet with folks, and we'll share the recommendations. We'll explain to the public how to use these maps. And so, but this methodology on consideration, we want to integrate within the long-range transportation plan. I'll certainly be putting it in the scope that we want this level of analysis to consider, because it's really doing, and Kent's more, with the city, it is really doing a great job of taking where the car is going, where do you know your growth is, what are you lacking, and then providing a methodology by which decisions are made. So then your people have two They're commenting on, do I agree with the methodology that you're using? They can say, yes, here it is, but it's defensible. You can say, okay, Mrs. Smith, the reason that we maybe are not putting a sidewalk where you are is if you can say, based on this grid, I understand, it's important. But with limited dollars, we need to consider where the most people need to be, where the highest percentage of use. And so we'll be able to provide that for the city.
Excellent, lots of good detail. When you said destinations, there's a number of destinations. What is that? Is that grocery stores and banks? Is that childcare? Is that all of the above?
It's
Because this then
also-
works in reverse, right? It shows you where a community maybe has stretched to get to something. And so, does it not perhaps make the case that somebody is so isolated that they need the connection rather than the dense area that has it?
And that is actually, Frank, you actually pointed out a great point, and I can't show you because it's what, it's. It's
The
delivered.
shock and awe that just landed.
What?
Any questions, call me.
Dank. Increases all the points of locations so that, and they've been color coded, whether it's a commercial district, whether it's a school, whether it's a business. And so that level of what's in these grids, and for that very reason, there may be very little from a grocery store or those type of things, but what if there is a main thing that someone needs? It is a daycare center. So there was the consideration, and that be brought to the group back on the 29th of what are the factors that maybe allow you to look past specifically connectivity and destination if it is a high need, especially if it's expressed by the public. And so that's where that June public input will go. We might hear from the public and say, yeah, that is a red square, but I happen to know for a fact that there's blah, blah, blah amount of people that need to go to this destination. That's where that input is. Great question, but of course, insight that you have.
Yeah,
And so,
cool data analytics, right? Yeah.
let's see.
Is it strictly just the city of Lynchburg?
It is the multimodal plan.
Not an NPO.
It is not, but the methodology and integration into the the LRTP update consideration.
So are you indicating that you're going to strive to have this view in all of the counties as well? Is that what you're saying?
If,
Is that what you were saying? Like,
no,
well, I know this is
the
Lynchburg.
urbanized area, right, our MPO, not, again, within the rule, I think that gets harder. Like the destination, but for the urbanized area, which is what we are.
Cool. Yeah. All right, so that brings us to thriving communities.
Yes, we're still moving forward with the thriving communities. We we found out we received up to $50,000 of additional dollars to do what they're calling a sub award. We've been coordinating with our city and GLTC partners of what that can look like to support the city along that 12th Street corridor. We've been looking at maybe some safety demonstration opportunities and some art projects consideration. And then we'll expect over the summer, anticipated to be July. We're just trying to hone in on the date when we can have a lot of good stakeholders, being city stakeholders, but also businesses along 12th Street, the community. The city has created such a strong interaction with Diamond Hill through the study that they did. So having all those stakeholders. So we were looking at the federal, our federal partners and our consultants coming in June, but we found we couldn't get all the folks that we needed. So we'll look forward for a site visit and our consultants and to really have a day with stakeholders in July. moving forward as well.
Great, thank you. Very busy as always. Any other questions or discussion on this work plan update? All right, hearing none, we'll go to public comment. See anybody here online? No? Okay. Move right on to matters from the board or staff. Federal partners aren't here. Rick, you got anything for us this afternoon, sir?
Just to make everybody aware, every year the CTB meeting is held in a different jurisdiction. It rotates around multiple different places. Next week it will be in Danville. So if you have not been to a Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting, it's going to be pretty local for us. So in Danville, there'll be dog and pony shows going on for the board, showing them the mega park down at Berry Hill and other projects that are going on, very similar to what we've done in the past when the CTB was Lynchburg. And we showed them around. So just to make you aware, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, CTB will be in Danville. So pretty close proximity. Just to make everybody aware, at least for studies going on in the area, we are actively engaged in a study on Grace Mill Road. Survey just closed on that. Campbell Avenue, we're doing a study on, redoing the study on Campbell Avenue, including the interchange. And in both of those studies, we're including the interchanges at the location. It's Expressway and 460, which was not done on the previous efforts with Campbell, but was done in Grace Mill. But we're updating those because they are out of the 10-year horizon. And we are actually meeting internally next week to discuss English Tavern as we prepare to go out for a public information meeting showcasing the recommendations for that study effort. So in addition to what Kelly has going on at the NPO, we partner pretty routinely at doing other study locations and utilizing, maximizing dollars from other sources, but not always taking from the NPO. But we have currently amongst our whole district, we've got 15 active studies going on currently, which is the most we've ever had with our staff. So it's quite a challenge, but we've got good consultants on, and you guys will be hearing more about that as we move forward. Alternatives start coming out.
Thank you. So that CTB meeting in Danville is where they're going to finally put the pin in the recommendations that we all lobbied for up at headquarters.
This will be the first formal presentation that there is consensus between the CTB members. For us, Linda Green, and we had an at-large, Mr. Lard, who also provided consensus for that. He's a rural at-large member. So we invited him in the mix to take a look at, provide him an opportunity for review. And he followed suit with Linda. So next week, they'll present any changes that the CTB members have made within their districts. Ours are status quo. What the consensus recommendation was is what it still is.
Okay, so them being in Danville and hearing from Berry Hill, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I do appreciate everybody's support to get those projects through to the recommendation stage. So
It's taking some time, but Campbell County, Laxton, Greenview is one of the projects. And then the very last, and that's really a City of Lynchburg, Campbell County project, multi-jurisdictional relevance there. And then the last section of the Route 29 access management is in the recommended scenario as well.
thank you. Question?
Getting with the reference to English Tavern, is that a follow-up to the event that was held at Highland Heights
It is.
a year ago? Okay.
So we've gone through a couple internal meetings, making sure our traffic engineering L&D folks are on board. There's nothing substantially off the wall, but there is one unique project at Sunnymead in Suburban that will have long-term effects for that area. Little unique. So we're meeting internally next week on our project day. Matter of fact, I may extend an invite to you guys just to be able to listen and be prepared. Yeah, so.
CTB program extended across 2 days. Is there something in particular that you think TPO and TTC members would benefit from seeing?
Typically, unless you're on the agenda, it's more of a listen and absorb. Sometimes some of those conversations go on for hours, especially when it's dealing with smart scale and changes. I've participated in a 4-hour conversation over one topic. It can get pretty brutal. So I mean, if you haven't had a chance to sit in on one, it's an opportunity for you to do so. Just to kind of absorb, how it goes. But, unless there's anything formal, there's no formal presentations, unless it's already set up on the agenda. The biggest thing here will be the consensus voting on the smart scale projects.
Thank you, sir. All right, I know our other federal agencies aren't here, but we're sending an application in, right? So that'll be coming before us later. Anybody else? Is there opportunity for other report outs around the table? There's no other business for the TPO. I'm making a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
All in favor? All right. Adjourn. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.